Hello and welcome back to the Pokémon 2020 Bochum Regional Championships, going into the final round of Swiss now, and we're going to be bringing you a match between Aleksandra Cwikiel and Jonathan Marston here.
Yeah, so these players are both 7-1, meaning they have to win out if they want to be a guaranteed top card.
Yes, so effectively, affectionately referred to as the win and in this situation. If you win, you're guaranteed that top cut spot. If you lose, you've still got a very good record, could potentially squeak into that top cut for day two. But obviously you want to be coming home with the win so that you can guarantee your spot in that day two. So we're going to be having Aleksandra here. I'm going to be running really cool team here. Going to be seeing another Vanillux on the stream. So
yeah, I hope for her this time that it's going to work out and it's maybe going to get up some Aurora Veils.
Yes, as we saw, it just got faked out and then knocked out immediately. So hopefully we can see a bit more of this Vanillux here. And Aleksandra, she was able to make the top 4 of the Frankfurt regionals, the very first regional that we had in the Sun series, and also the very first regional that you were a caster at as well. So
yes, definitely. I didn't actually did that game, but I know that she actually went to top 4. So she did really, really well in that tournament.
Yeah, and she's also doing really, really well in this tournament as well, just one win away from making the day 2 once again. So going to be really interesting to see if she can overcome Jonathan Marston here, who was able to come second in the most recent special event that we had over in Nanterre. He's also won a regional back in the Sun series as well, as we see his team here, and also some really cool picks coming out from Jonathan as well.
Yeah, we see that Hippowdon there. Definitely not something that we've seen before.
Yeah, and usually that Tyranitar paired with Excadrill to make use of the sand rush that it has, but Hippowdon also having access to that sand stream is going to be able to set the sand just as well as the Tyranitar can and go for a different strategy with the Hippowdon. Usually the Tyranitar wants to be dealing out a lot of damage, potentially activating something like a weakness policy for itself, but Hippowdon, a much more bulky Pokemon, much more slower paced Pokemon. It's usually using something like that Yawn that we've seen a lot of Pokemon use to counter the Dynamax as well, and Hippowdon a really good user of that Yawn as well. And also we're seeing a Lapras when Gigantamax Lapras isn't available yet.
No, so that's going to be going for that Dynamax turn. And now immediately getting into team preview. On Aleksandra's side we have that Whimsicott, Charizard, Gastrodon, Corviknight, Dragapult and that Vanillux. And on Jonathan's side we have the Excadrill, Hippowdon, Dragapult, Indeedee, Lapras and Chandelure.
Yeah, so this is really going to be a war of the weathers here. You've got that Vanillux facing down the Hippowdon as well, but you've also got the combination that we see quite commonly in that Whimsicott and the Charizard. And when you see both of those Pokemon, the Whimsicott is very commonly carrying something like Sunny Day as well. So could be seeing a lot of weathers going into this match. The Vanillux going to be hitting super effectively against that Hippowdon, so if the Hippowdon wants to be stopping the hail coming out from the Vanillux, it's still going to have to potentially take some super effective damage, and Hippowdon wants to be setting up that sand for the Excadrill to be able to make use of the sand rush abilities. He's also got that Lapras as well, not having access to the Gigantamax form yet, not being able to set up the pseudo Aurora Veil with its Gmax resonance yet. It's not available for the Lapras yet, so only Aurora Veil potential coming out from Aleksandra's side with her Vanillux instead. So going to be interesting to see what that Lapras is doing. I'm not quite sure how Lapras is running this format yet before it's got its Gmax form, so I'm really interested to see what the Lapras is doing, especially that Hippowdon as well.
Yeah, maybe you want to see something like an Indeedee come out to maybe redirect any moves here coming out from that Vanillux.
Yeah, Indeedee being the female variety, having access to that Follow Me as well. And Jonathan here really losing the trainer card game.
Definitely. Aleksandra winning there with that beautiful Meowth with that Gigantamax Meowth. And we're going to go right into the leads here. And we are going to see that Indeedee, but it is going to be paired with that Excadrill. Aleksandra leading with that Dragapult and Vanillux combination. And we are going to see that Snow Warning set up the hill. Yeah,
so I really like this lead from Jonathan. Leading with his Excadrill that wants to make use of the sand, but not leading with the Hippowdon. Potentially having it in the back to switch in on this Vanillux, which has been led for Aleksandra as well. And a really cool item coming out from this Indeedee immediately. That's Psychic Seed boosting the special defense as well. So going to be taking those special moves coming out from this Vanillux, and maybe potentially that Dragapult as well. It is quite commonly run physically, but it can also run that special set as we've seen as well. So really cool item choice on this Indeedee, making it a lot more bulky and really able to take these special moves a lot easier. And with the Excadrill here, it is going to be threatening that Vanillux, but the Vanillux has the potential to set up an Aurora Veil here if the Hippowdon doesn't switch in for Jonathan's side. If the Hippowdon was switching in to let the Excadrill get its Sand Rush ability, then Indeedee would just be sacrificing the Psychic Seed that it's already set for itself just immediately.
Yeah, so Vanillix not wanting to go for any Aurora Veils or strong ice attacks is going to be switching out for that Corviknight. And Aleksandra, I believe, here going immediately for that Dynamaxmon, which is then going to be that Dragapult.
Yeah, Dragapult. A Pokemon, when you run it physically, it very much likes to go for that Dynamax, as you have Phantom Force and Dragon Darts as well, but kind of unreliable moves when you're going for them when it's in its regular form, so opting to Dynamax here instead.
Oh, and also Jonathan immediately going for that Dynamax. Both players here deciding immediately turn 1, we're going to start doing a lot of damage here, possibly being that Excadrill.
Yeah, Excadrill as well. Another common Pokemon that we see Dynamaxing. Getting access to the Max Quake or the Max Steel Spike, 2 moves that boost either your defenses or special defenses and increasing the overall bulk of your team.
Yeah, that's definitely a good play there, but Indeedee just wanting to go for a protect, being a little bit scared here facing down that Dragapult, which is now going to go for a Max Whirlwind. Is going to go into that Indeedee and is now, because of that protect, just taking a tiny bit of damage, but it will also lower the attacks of that Excadrill and the Indeedee, of course. But for Excadrill, definitely going to be mattering. Excadrill here opting to go for that Max Rockfall into the Corviknight, doing a tiny bit of chip damage here, but it will now get up the sand stream instead of the hill that Alexandria's Vanillix set up in the beginning of the last turn.
Yeah, so not needing the Hippowdon to activate the Sand Rush on this Excadrill, just activates it itself. Just going for that Max Rockfall, setting up the sand instead, and resetting the weather to be the sand instead of the hail. But Aleksandra quite smartly switching out the Vanillux, having the potential to now bring it back in and reduce the speed of the Excadrill back down. And with that Max Whirlwind, the Excadrill isn't doing as much damage as before, thanks to its attack being dropped by 1 stage as well. And the Indeedee still taking quite a lot of damage through that Protect as well, so probably going to be a physical Dragapult coming out here with the Psychic Seed boosting its special defense. It would have done probably quite a lot less damage to that Indeedee. So the Corviknight here is in a really nice position facing down this Excadrill and the Indeedee, but apparently it didn't want to be in that position.
It didn't want to be in that position, and instead that Gastrodon is going to be switching in a Max Steel Spike coming out from that Excadrill going into that Dragapult. Not really doing a lot of damage, but it will start raising its defenses, meaning that this Dragapult is going to be doing less damage. Dragapult opting to go for another Max Whirlwind into the Indeedee here, which is again be able to hang on and lift this Max Whirlwind. And now this Excadrill is going to be dealing with this -2 attack stat. And a Psychic followed up by Indeedee into the Dragapult, now bringing it just over half damage together, also with the chips damage that we're now seeing from Sandstorm.
Yeah, quite a nice combination coming out from this Excadrill and the Indeedee. The Indeedee activating the Psychic Terrain to activate its own Psychic Seed, boosting its special defense, and now the Excadrill going for those Max Steel Spikes to raise the defense of the Indeedee. So quite nice synergy between the two there, getting both of the defenses increased on the Indeedee to let it survive longer and redirect the moves away from the Excadrill. Although it didn't need to redirect that turn, it was actually doing about the same amount of damage as the Excadrill, thanks to those Max Whirlwinds dropping the attack of the Excadrill. Indeedee doesn't care about its attack being dropped, is able to fire off that Psychic and still do very considerable damage to the Dragapult, and now it would still be able to redirect a move away from this Dragapult, but the Dragapult won't be attacking this turn.
Now it wants to make sure that it makes it through this turn. A Max Quake from that Excadrill is going to be going into that Dragapult, as Heal Pulse here coming out from Indeedee going into the Excadrill, and now the Earth Power from Gastrodon is going to be enough to pick up the knockout on this Indeedee.
Yeah, probably expecting that Dragapult to be attacking into the Excadrill that turn, maybe with something like a Max Phantasm instead of the Max Whirlwinds to start doing some nice damage to the Excadrill. The Heal Pulse would have been really nice to cover that, and if the Dragapult would have been attacking into the Indeedee anyway, then Follow Me wouldn't have made any difference. So quite a nice Heal Pulse there, even though it didn't actually achieve anything. I do like that Heal Pulse going into the Excadrill, and now that the Indeedee's being knocked out, the Chandelure here is going to be threatening some ghost damage onto this Dragapult. We're going to have both of the Dynamaxes run out for both Jonathan and Aleksandra here, so we've seen that this Dragapult is most likely a physical based on the damage it's been doing to that Indeedee, and the most common ghost move that we have coming out from a physical Dragapult is that Phantom Force. So it would have to take a turn to be able to attack that Chandelure, letting that Chandelure make whatever move it wants to go for, if that was the set that the Dragapult was carrying. And the Gastrodon is threatening the Gastrodon here. The Gastrodon is threatening the Excadrill here quite heavily.
Yeah, Chandelure just going to go for Protect. Well, Excadrill is going to go for a high horsepower into that Dragapult. Now Dragapult having the opportunity to vanish and go for that Phantom Force. Gastrodon following it up with an Earth Power into the Protect of that Chandelure. Now seeing, you know, a tiny bit of chip damage from this Sandstorm.
Yeah, so a Protect this turn, protecting the Chandelure from that Earth Power, but not from this Phantom Force that could be going into it this turn. And even if it was able to protect, the Phantom Force would just break straight through that. So Chandelure looks to be in a very precarious position right now. The Excadrill isn't too much of a threat to Aleksandra at the moment. It will be outspeeding the Dragapult thanks to that Sand Rush, so won't be able to attack it before it attacks with its Phantom Force. So Dragapult is in a really nice position. It's going to be able to land this Phantom Force somewhere. That's into the Chandelure. It will easily pick up a knockout on it, and the Excadrill won't be able to stop it from doing that. So the Phantom Force here, really nice move from Aleksandra, and the Gastrodon still putting on a lot of offensive pressure, both on the Excadrill and the Chandelure with that Earth Power. So if we saw that Phantom Force going into the Chandelure, the Earth Power should be able to knock out the Excadrill as well.
Yeah, Jonathan realizing that doesn't want to take a Phantom Force going into that Chandelure, and instead is switching that Dragapult in. Excadrill firing off a high horsepower into the Gastrodon, and that Phantom Force is just enough to pick up the KO on this Dragapult here.
Yeah, so 2 Ghost types in that slot that the Phantom Force was going to be hitting, so not good for Jonathan.
Gastrodon here going for a yawn, meaning that Excadrill is either going to have to switch out or it's going to be put to sleep in the next turn.
They can't switch out now. Jonathan's down to his last 2 Pokemon, so it will be falling asleep at the end of this turn. So really nicely played from Aleksandra here. She was able to reduce the attack of that Excadrill with those Max Wormons at the beginning of the game, so it wasn't doing too much damage. It allowed that Dragapult to take that high horsepower that the Excadrill attacked it with, and was able to land that Phantom Force into the Dragapult on Jonathan's side. And now that the sand has run out on the field, the Dragapult would be able to go for that Phantom Force again into the Chandelure slots.
Yeah, Jonathan realizing there's just nothing he can do anymore. Going to go for that forfeit, trying to probably think that what am I going to do now going into game 2.
Yeah, he seemed to rely on his Excadrill quite heavily, but thanks to those Max Whirlwinds, it was really reducing the damage potential coming out from the Excadrill. He wanted to move first as he activated the Max Rockfall on turn 1 to activate the Sand Rush on the Excadrill, so it would be outspeeding the Dragapult. But when its attack is just reduced, it doesn't really matter when you're moving if you're not doing enough damage.
No, because Excadrill kind of just was there on the field. Aleksandra didn't even bother to actually attack it.
Yeah, and she did really nicely taking out the Indeedee before she was going for those Phantom Forces, because if Indeedee is still on the field and you've gone for a Phantom Force, it's a very easy redirect into the Indeedee, which is of course a normal type, so would be able to just be immune to that Phantom Force and make it useless. But then as soon as the Indeedee left the field, there were 2 Ghost Pokemon in the back for Jonathan, and neither of them want to take Phantom Force at all, so Aleksandra put herself into a really good position. Yeah,
now going into game 2, would you like to see maybe that Hippowdon coming out from Jonathan?
I want to see that Hippowdon on stream. I also want to see the Lapras on stream. I want to see those 2 really cool picks from Jonathan coming out, because I'm not quite sure what they would be doing. So I think a lot of other people won't be quite sure what they're doing, so could really be catching people off guard. And yeah, I think Hippowdon would allow the Excadrill to start firing off an attack immediately. Rather than having to take a turn to activate the sand with its Max Rockfall, it can fire off a Max Quake or a Max Steel Spike immediately, doing a lot more damage and also increasing the defenses immediately on his side of the field to be able to take attacks from Aleksandra better.
Yeah, so do you think Aleksandra just wants to kind of go for the same lead that she went with for game 1, or do you think like maybe she wants to go a different mode?
Well, she went with the Vanillux as the lead, and then it switched out and never hit the field again. So it's still kind of this awkward weather war going on between the Vanillux, and we didn't see that the Hippowdon came, but the Excadrill was still setting up the sand for itself. So there is still that weather war going on, even if it's going to be a manual activation of the sand instead. We didn't see the Whimsicott coming out from Aleksandra, potentially still carrying that sunny day for the Charizard. Didn't go with the Charizard mode at all, opting for the Hail instead to counter the Hippowdon. But yeah, if we do see the Hippowdon coming out against the Vanillux, then it would still be able to break the sash of the Vanillux with the Sandstorm chip, and the Excadrill will be able to bring it down to that sash as well. So I think the positioning of the weathers is still quite important here.
Yeah, so maybe Aleksandra wants to maybe bring Vanillix in the back. So in case Jonathan does bring that Hippowdon in, she at least has something to switch it back in and then set up that hill, making sure that Excadrill doesn't just freely start doing a lot of damage immediately from turn 1.
Yeah, we do have the potential of Jonathan going with his Indeedee and then maybe going with one of his ghost types. So if he's facing down that Dragapult, immediately the Indeedee would be able to redirect away all those ghost moves that could go into his ghost type, whether that's his Dragapult or his Chandelure, and then they would be able to fire back their ghost attacks into the Dragapult.
Yeah, so we definitely would like to see maybe some switches up in Jonathan's team, seeing that he had quite a hard time dealing with the Dragapult on Aleksandra's side. So either replacing the Dragapult or the Chandelure, and we are going to see that Lapras this time together with the Excadrill, and we are going to see that Vanillix Dragapult combination come out again.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see this Lapras on the field. I'm very curious what it is going to be doing. So Aleksandra, even though the Vanillux didn't really do anything for her in that game 1, still deciding that it is a worthwhile lead to go for. Even though if Jonathan would have led the Hippowdon against the Vanillux, then the Sam would have been activated immediately. So this Excadrill in still quite an awkward position. Whether it wants to set up the Sand for itself again, and we still don't know if the Hippowdon was even brought to this match. The Excadrill is naturally faster than the Vanillux, so would be able to fire off a move into that slot as well, and maybe something like an Ice Shard will be able to break a potential Focus Sash on the Vanillux, but we're going to be seeing that Dynamax coming out immediately from Aleksandra again.
Yeah, she is immediately opting to go for that Dynamax. It's going to be the same one this time again, that Dragapult.
Yeah, so maybe wanting to fire off more of those Max Whirlwinds that were so effective in keeping the Excadrill in check on Jonathan's side.
Yeah, we're going to see if that's exactly what it did, but first we're going to also see the Dynamax here come out from Jonathan. And looking at the fact that that's a dive ball, that's probably going to be the Lapras.
Yes, and it is indeed that Lapras. So not opting for the Dynamax on Excadrill here, not going to be boosting his defenses or setting the Sand with that Rockfall, instead going with the Lapras instead. So going to be really interesting to see what this Lapras can do.
So Vanillix going for a Ice Shard into its own Dragapult, so indicating that it's probably going to be weakness policy. So it's going to be raising its attack and special attack by two stages, and it's going to be firing off a boosted Max Whirlwind into this Lapras, doing a lot of damage here. Also going to be lowering again that attack stat of the Excadrill, which worked so incredibly well for her in that game 1, as Excadrill is following it up with an Iron Head into the Vanillix, doing just over half damage, as Lapras here goes for a Max Hailstorm into this Dragapult, which is not enough to pick up the kill. Even with that super effective damage, this Dragapult is going to be free to go for another attack.
Yeah, so what a turn coming out in this game 2. The Ice Shard into your own Dragapult to activate the weakness policy. Really cool tech coming out here, but still not enough to knock out the Lapras. The Lapras was able to fire back that Max Hailstorm, putting the Dragapult dangerously low, and unfortunately still the Gigantamax form not being available, the Hail still on the field, Max Hailstorm not being used to its full effect there with its secondary effect, and not able to set up that Aurora Veil yet, but Max Whirlwind is still going to be reducing that attack of the Excadrill.
Yeah, it is now going to be picking up the knockout on that Lapras here, and again, kind of what we saw in game 1, this Excadrill is now going to be at -2, and again, Aleksandra has yet to even attack it.
Yeah, so really nicely done from Aleksandra, reducing the attack of the Excadrill here, so this Iron Head is still not even enough to pick up the knockout on the Dragapult.
No, and we are going to see that Aurora Veil come out, which we have been talking about. Is going to be making sure that it's kind of a reflect and a light screen combination. Dragapult is now going to faint because of that chip damage from the Hail coming out.
Yeah, but it's done more than enough. It knocked out the Dynamax on Jonathan's side with his Lapras, and it's done exactly what it did in game 2 as well. It's reduced that Excadrill down to -2 attack, so it's really not going to be doing too much damage here, especially now that she set the Aurora Veil with that Vanillux, reducing the attack on both the physical and special side now even further. So we traded Dynamax on both sides, so Aleksandra's lost her Dynamax in her Dragapult and Jonathan's lost the Dynamax in the Lapras, but Aleksandra now has a really weak Excadrill and has to face down the Aurora Veil on her side of the field as well.
Yeah, so we see Gastrodon switching in for Aleksandra's side, and now the Jonathan is bringing in that Dragapult. So maybe Excadrill wanting to try and switch out here?
Yeah, I think it probably needs to, because it's really not going to be doing too much damage. An Iron Head may be able to pick up the knockout on the Vanillux because it's still super effective damage, but thanks to that Aurora Veil as well, maybe the Vanillux would be able to take it and fire off a potential Blizzard into the Dragapult, which Dragapult really doesn't want to be taking here. And Dragapult isn't really threatening too much onto the Gastrodon either, and we've seen that Gastrodon was carrying that Yawn as well, so not really too threatened, able to fire off those Yawns and really put Jonathan in an awkward position where he has to decide if he keeps switching out or if he stays in and falls asleep.
So Dragapult going for a Shadow Ball here into the Vanillix, enough to pick up the knockout. So Jonathan deciding to go for the special variant of that Dragapult as Iron Head comes out from that Excadrill, doing a tiny bit of damage to that Gastrodon while it fires back with an Earth Powering, doing a good amount of damage there. Also getting that special defense drop.
Yeah, so not opting for a Yawn instead, so going on the offense with the Gastrodon and attacking the Excadrill that wasn't doing too much damage to this Gastrodon. We saw really not, is really shrugging off the moves that the Excadrill went for, and a lot of damage coming out from the Shadow Ball from the Dragapult, and that was through Aurora Veil as well. And
we're actually good to see that Charizard switching in on Aleksandra's side.
Yeah, it's an interesting switch in here. She doesn't have her Sun Up, the potential with the Whimsicott as well, so Charizard isn't going to be doing too much damage to Jonathan's side of the field, and not using the Dynamax as well, won't be able to go for something like the Dynamax into the Max Airstream as well to boost the speeds.
Yeah, Jonathan's Dragapult here going for another Shadow Ball, this time opting to go into that Gastrodon. Charizard firing back with a Heat Wave, enough to pick up the KO on that Excadrill this time. So definitely a offensive turn here, also revealing that this Gastrodon is, this Charizard is Life Orb, as Gastrodon goes for a Yawn into that Dragapult. And now since Jonathan is down to his last two Pokemon, he's not going to be able to switch it out again.
Yeah, so Dragapult will be falling asleep at the end of this turn, but it's really doing a lot of damage to this Gastrodon, and it did a lot of damage to the Vanillux, and Aleksandra had set Aurora Veil on her side of the field, so most of the time we do see Clear Body on that Dragapult, but it does have access to that Infiltrator as well. So an ability that allows it to ignore the screens that are set up on the opponent, and it's really doing a lot of damage here, so it could be interesting to see whether the Dragapult is carrying that Infiltrator instead of that common Clear Body. So it's got one more turn on the field, it can fire off one more Shadow Ball before it goes to sleep.
Yeah, Charizard just wanting to go for a Protect this turn, maybe kind of scouting out what is going to come out from this Dragapult and Chandelure combination. Also, Gastrodon gonna go for a Protected Shadow Ball from Dragapult, going into Protect of the Charizard, and also Chandelure following it up with a Shadow Ball into the Protect of that Gastrodon.
Yeah, so Shadow Balls all over the place, but firing off into those Protects, and now the Dragapult is going to be going to sleep, so it will have to stay asleep for this turn. It will allow the Charizard to make an attack, and Dragapult has taken quite a lot of damage, and we've seen that it is Life Orb on the Charizard, so maybe something like an Air Slash would be enough to pick up the knockout on the Dragapult. Something like a Hurricane would definitely be enough to pick up the knockout, but it's a lot more risky if Jonathan has opted to carry that.
Yeah, but also this Charizard probably not want to go for a Heat Wave since it is facing down that Chandelure, which could be running something like Flash Fire. Instead, it's just going to go for an Air Slash, getting that flinch onto the Chandelure as Gastrodon is able to fire a Earth Power into it, being able to knock it out this time.
Yeah, really not what Jonathan wanted to see. We see a lot of Togekiss getting the Air Slash flinches thanks to that Serene Grace boost, but Charizard here not having access to that Serene Grace, much more unlikely to get the flinches from the Air Slash, but that is its secondary effect, and it can still come through, and it really came through for Aleksandra here. And now Jonathan definitely has to wake up with his Dragapult this turn, else the Charizard's going to be able to do a lot of damage to the Dragapult, maybe pick up the knockout with its Life Orb, and Gastrodon will still be able to fire off some Earth Powers into the Dragapult as well, so it's looking really good for Aleksandra here.
So kind of hoping that Dragapult is going to wake up here. Who do you think that it could best target?
Well, we've seen that Shadow Ball is easily enough to pick up the knockout on the Gastrodon. You don't really want to let it get a recover off, but no, it's just going to stay asleep and not be able to pick up any KOs. Yeah,
it's now going to be taken an Air Slash coming out from that Charizard, which is just going to be enough to pick up the knockout here.
Yeah, so Aleksandra is going to be taking this game and this set, and she is going to be advancing into day 2 tomorrow.
Yeah, so I do think, you know, having a good lead card might have just been the extra luck that she needed to get that flinch.
Yes, that was definitely Jonathan's downfall. You should always update your trainer card to something that looks a lot better than the original one. So, yeah, that was a really, really cool game. The The Lapras didn't really do too much. I'd like to see it do a bit more, but going for the Max Hailstorm, not doing too much damage. The Ice Shard into your own Dragapult, really nice combination coming out from Aleksandra and doing a lot of damage. And yeah, the Max Whirlwinds were really crucial coming out from the Dragapults in both games, reducing the attack down in the Excadrill, really making that slot useless.
Yeah, so Aleksandra definitely utilizing that Vanillix really well, but also that Dragapult, seemed to just be dashing out so much damage, and Jonathan had a really hard time kind of dealing with that, especially being at like -2 with his Excadrill.
Yeah, so not opting for the Hippowdon mode, and the Excadrill is not being used to its full potential. So yeah, it's just really nicely played from Aleksandra. The Dragapult put on so much offensive pressure for her, and she was able to pick the right Pokemon to clean up.
Yeah, we're going to end this round here. We're going to still have a winner's interview with Aleksandra, so we're going to be right back.
We're in? Okay. Hello and welcome back to the Pokemon 2020 Bochum Regional Championship for the final time. And I am joined by the winner of the final round of Swiss here, Aleksandra. How are you feeling?
It was a really wild day. I totally didn't expect these results.
Well, you managed to top cut the first regional of the season last year, back in the Sun Series when that was introduced in Frankfurt, and you've top cut yet again the first regional of the season.
Yeah.
So that seems to be your theme going into these tournaments.
I guess I'm strong in the early metas, and
yeah, you've made some really good calls. That weakness policy Dragapult was really key going into Game 2, and you were able to keep that hidden going into Game 1 and then just go for that explosive turn 1 with the Ice Shard into your own Dragapult. So how did you come up with the weakness policy on that Dragapult?
I actually intended to activate the weakness policy in the first game, but my opponent led the NDD, so of course the Ice Shard was blocked, and I tried to think, all right, maybe I need to try something different. I started switching around my Pokemon. I just wanted to focus on survivability. I wanted to make sure as many of my Pokemon were alive as possible. And regarding the weakness policy with Dragapult, I actually used to use a special Dragapult, and
yeah, having a much higher base attack is going to be doing a lot more damage with that weakness policy boost.
I had a talk with my friends who are also at this tournament, and they pointed out that the physical Dragapult has the advantage of basically boosting its own attack by dropping the defenses of the opponent with the max Phantasm, and that I just realized that it has much higher damage potential, and the weakness policy strategies, I guess, are pretty common right now. I actually countered Ice Shards Inteleon with Togekiss and Quick Attack Sylveon on Holucha. So I guess those kinds of strats are currently becoming more common, and I was kind of inspired by them.
Yeah,
I just decided to come up with something on my own.
Yeah, it's a really cool strategy as well. Something else that we saw, the Yawn on the Gastrodon really coming in key in that Game 2, putting the Dragapult to sleep so it wasn't able to fire off those Shadow Balls again.
Yes. I actually kept clicking the Yawn when Dragapult was sleeping, just in case it woke up and KO'd one of my Pokemon, just so I could secure the win there. And Yawn was recommended to me by my friend as well. And to be honest, I didn't really expect for it to come in clutch this much, but it really won me basically at least half of my games.
Yeah, it was really important in that game too. Yeah,
very important.
Yeah. So how did it feel facing down a Hippowdon with your Vanillux? Because normally we see the Tyranitar as the sand setter, but then the Hippowdon's weak to the Vanillux. So how do you approach that weather war going with your Vanillux?
I don't really focus on keeping up my weather, to be honest. Vanillux is mostly a counter pick against popular strategies like Togekiss, Dragapult. I suppose the meta game is pretty suspect to Ice type Pokemon. Not only Vanillux, but also the Darmanitan. And so just to answer your question, how do I keep up with the weather board? With the weather board, I usually don't. But if I suspect that I will need to, I just switch out my Pokemon around and try to keep up Vanillux alive until the end game. And it actually won me one game today.
Yeah, well, it seemed to work out pretty well here. Congratulations on your top cut. So we'll be seeing you again tomorrow. Hope to see you back on the stream again tomorrow. Looking forward to that.
Looking forward to tomorrow as well.
Yes. So I'm going to take one last break here, and then we'll be coming back with our top 16 bracket that we'll be having going into this day 2. So stay tuned.